Mike,
that happens.
Let's start with, and I know you said he's got to do things differently than he did in Brooklyn, but when he was in Brooklyn, the Nets consistently were near the top of three-point attempts and pace.
Yep.
Something that would be good to see with the Cavaliers.
Yeah.
Do you think he will be able to bring that here where he's got a lot more talent?
Yeah, when you look at what Kenny Atkinson has done from an offensive standpoint and the coaches he's coached with in the past, there's two main influences, especially on the offensive end of the court, that you see. He's worked with Mike D'Antoni, spacing, pacing, high pick and roll, spread the floor, and Coach Budenholzer, who focuses on shots at the rim and three-point attempts. And his overall philosophies, if you break down all the stuff from Brooklyn and what he's did, comes down to kind of these four pillars. Threes and layups, rebound and run. They run early offensive sets, and if that's not there, it flows right into a secondary set, and then pace and space. We want to run, and the floor is spread. We're going to break down some plays in a sec.
Explain what you mean
with
you say early offensive sets, and then the second. What do you mean?
You'll see it in the film, but when they come down, it's not, hey, let's dribble down. Now there's 17 seconds on the shot clock. Let's get into an action.
We're dribble.
It is, we're throwing the ball up.
Yeah.
We're going. As I'm crossing half court, and you'll see the first play we break down is what they run early a lot, and then there's a couple counters off that.
Right.
We're getting right into it with about 19 seconds on the shot clock.
You want to get into it right away. If it's not there, then we reset in a way.
And it's not even necessarily a reset in the sense of let's pull the ball back out, call another play.
Yeah.
It's just the next option in the offense. It's a layered offensive attack, which fits modern basketball. And he just came off 2 years with Golden State. He spent some time with Ty Lue. Golden State is the pinnacle of pace and space and keep moving the ball movement. That's what they emphasize. So I'm sure all the stuff he did in Brooklyn, he did it in Atlanta beforehand. It was been only enhanced since his last two stints. He's been in the Clippers.
I mean, he's been in some great systems around great coaches.
Yeah, and some numbers about him. And you mentioned this a second ago. All 4 years in Brooklyn, they finished top 5 in the league in three-point attempts. They finished top 9 in three-point makes, and they finished top 11 in pace. All 4 years he was the head coach in Brooklyn. So they want to shoot threes. Steve, you take the next graphic whenever you want, please. They shoot threes, they make threes, and they run. You talked about early offense. Let's show you guys a couple plays from the Kenny Atkinson playbook here as they dive in. This is essentially what they run in early offense, Bull. Simple reversal into a double stagger. And when you're watching these plays, try to envision Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Max Strus, and some of the Cavs players running this action. This is the same set. It's a simple swing, reverse, and we're going to set a double stagger across. Bull, check the shot clock. They are in the paint driving with 15 seconds on the shot clock. There's no such thing as let's walk the ball up the court, call something out.
Everybody stands around.
It's immediately let's get into it.
There's better flow to the offense.
Exactly. Pace and space is the word. It puts the defender who's trailing on the double stagger here in a really difficult position. You got to fight over 2 screens, and if you can fight over 2 screens, if they're set well, then you're kind of in a tough position if they run some counters, which we'll get to in a sec. This is going to loop around again. But a very basic, they called it motion strong. I'm not sure exactly where the terminology came from. But it's the same play over. Max Strus could be effective in this. Donovan Mitchell, I think, could thrive in a situation like this. You have Darius Garland come across, swing it. Here's Garland. You got Mitchell coming off a double stagger on the opposite side. And I'll show you in the next play what the counters are in the second levels to this. But it puts a defender in a really difficult position trying to trail 2 stagger screens and then get in front of a guy to keep him and close off the driving lane to deter him from going. So you can run this with a bunch of different players. Different guys can be effective. That's Damari Carroll, who draws the foul there on the 3-point attempt. But it's pretty basic. It's nothing super intuitive. It's not something that other teams don't run. They just get into it quick and force you to guard for 24 seconds. Steve, if we go to the second video now, it's one of the counters off this. You see no guy in the corner here for a double stagger, so what do? All right, we're still going to move quick. We're just going to run a single stagger. D'Angelo Russell comes off. And now on the backside, you have a little pin down action while the entire front side of the court is open for a ball screen. That's a lot of space for 2 guys to work. Imagine Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley in that situation. You want to see Mobley as a facilitator. Yeah. That's an opportunity right here. Another, just a single stagger. Allen Crabbe comes off, grab, 3 shots from the free throw line right there. It's quick hitters. Here's another one. Similar action. It's the double stagger, except they don't do the ball reversal. Why does that make a difference? Well, the ball reversal keys the defense saying, hey, this is coming. We're not going to let you know it's coming this time. We're just going to run off. Look how far the defender's trailing Allen Crabbe on this play.
Right.
Coming off a double stagger. It's a wide open 3. That's what Miami did with Max Strus to a T time and time again. This is on loop now, so you'll see. But they have these different little counters off the same looking play bowl. So as you get into your defensive set, you can't anticipate what's coming because it happens so quickly.
Yeah, and if if you're getting into your offense quick, there's going to be times, as you said, where the defense is not ready.
Yeah.
Or maybe not expecting you to
Or it's cross-matched, and then you have
Yeah.
a big trailing a guard on a screen.
That sounds all positive.
They also, and there's plenty more. I just picked a couple. We could spend, no joke, 4 hours on this. They also did have some 2 big sets in Brooklyn. It wasn't what they like to do, but they did run some sets with 2 guys.
Who was their other big guy with Jared?
Well, Jared came later. They had Quincy AC. They had Timofey Mozgov. They had Rondé Hollis-Jefferson. And the next play I'm going to show you, it's AC and Trevor Booker. This is called the Spain screen, which is essentially screen the screener. There are ways to get spacing with 2 bigs, and there are ways to utilize 2 bigs. It's a little go screen from Booker. AC comes and screens the guy who is guarding Booker, which puts Jonathan Isaac in a 1-on-2 situation defensively, difficult to guard. Here's Jared Allen and Rondé Hollis-Jefferson. Not a screen the screener, but because Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, instead of clearing out all the way to the corner, he stops in the short corner right there. Aaron Gordon has to decide, do I give up the lob?
Yeah.
Or do I stay with Rondé Hollis-Jefferson? It puts him in a little pickle. He has to make a split-second decision. There are ways to utilize 2 bigs, and Atkinson has done it previously in Brooklyn with these 2 examples. In Golden State, they played Draymond Green and Kevin Looney together, which is another modern-day 2 non-shooting big lineup that he's shown ways that he can create space with. So I think from a basic, and once again, these are 3 of probably 75 plays in the Kenny Atkinson playbook. We can look at this for hours. I'll probably break down a few others on an Ultimate Cavs show later this week. He has ways to get the Cavs now with their current personnel into offensive sets more quickly, more efficiently, and the talent he did this with in Brooklyn is nowhere near the talent level that he'll have to work with the Cavaliers.
Jason, we know Kenny Atkinson can bring up a team that doesn't have a lot of talent, right? That year, I think it was his first year. Was it his first year?
That was
when
all
the Cavs traded Kyrie Irving, and
his first year in Brooklyn was 16, wasn't
17.
it? Yeah.
16,
okay, so second year, right? He had a team with no talent. The Cavs got the draft pick from the Nets.
Yeah.
He
screwed them. They won too many games.
We all thought, they'd have the top lottery. It doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you thought. They ended up being a pretty representative
28
team.
games, yeah.
When you thought they'd be the worst team in the NBA.
And they were in 50 games that year.
Right.
That
and
were
they just
considered
had
clutch.
they had no talent.
They had D'Angelo Russell was their best
Right.
player. And when you watch those plays, like that was D'Angelo Russell and Allen Crabbe and Joe Harris.
Right.
I mean, if you switch those 3 players with Mitchell, Garland, Strus, or if you trade one of those for a wing and add a legitimate wing scorer to the threat, like those actions should create a ton of good
And
looks.
didn't Joe Harris have like a great year with him?
He's a player development guy. Joe Harris had
Yeah.
the best season of his career with him. D'Angelo Russell had the best season of his career with him. Spencer Dinwiddie had the best season of his career. He helped turn Al Horford and Brook Lopez into shooters, which plays right into the Evan Mobley or even Jared Allen discussion.
But he's coming into a very different team here, Jason.
Yeah.
Not a team just looking to compete. They're looking to compete for a title.
Yeah.
Or at least an Eastern Conference title. So I think that's the question. We know he can coach a talentless team and get them up, but we don't know about this.
And there, a lot of times coaches are broken into coach on a bad team.
Right.
You're the rebuild guy.
Yeah.
And now that was Atkinson
Right.
at one time. That was him in Brooklyn. He was the rebuild guy. And then they threw him out and they brought in Steve Nash, and that was a disaster.
Yes.
But now he's got the other opportunity of being the contending guy.
Yeah.
And we'll see how he does with it.
Yeah.
It's a much different job. It's much different pressure that comes with it. And yes, and I've heard that he's a player development guy. This is not, and Evan Mobley needs to be developed.
Yes.
And Darius needs to improve.
It's not a player development job.
This is not a player development job.
This is a win now job.
Yes. This is you have to win games. You have to win playoff games. It goes back to the ATO conversation that we had where I thought JB struggled at times.
Yeah.
You have to know when to use timeouts. You got to know how to get them a play. What's your bread and butter play that you're going to go to when you need it in moments. It's a much different job than a job with no expectations and little talent. And if you win 28 games or 30 games, that's considered a success.
You got what you're saying is 100% right. But I'm not worried about how many games they win in the regular season next year, right? I mean, we don't care about that. And yes, they do. Do you think Kenny Atkinson does? I mean, I don't know. They've got to win when it matters, and they've got to have the team ready. So Evan, I think this year it is imperative to develop Evan Mobley, even if that potentially cost him some regular season wins. In my opinion.
I've said that for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's okay to punt a couple games here and there.
Right.
If you're getting something out of it.
What does it matter if they win 46 in the regular season?
I
or
think
51?
we have to let. I think we have
Yeah.
to let it play. What you don't want to be like LeBron used to take to the extreme.
Sure.
You don't want to be
the 6th seed
in the play-in tournament.
Yeah, right. Sure.
You want to, and we just have to see. First of all, we have to see what the roster looks like.
Yeah.
And we have to see how the season unfolds and see who's where and where the seedings are falling.
Yeah.
But I'm not circling a number of they have to win this number of games in the regular season for it to be a success.
I don't trust the Cavs yet to be able to turn the switch on and just turn it on and say, okay, we're good now.
Yeah.
And with a new coach and a new roster, like it takes games to figure out what works.
Right.
So you may start a little slow just trying to figure out the offensive and defensive scheme that the Cavs are trying to run and how players fit into it and how the chemistry develops, and if it's the same core four back or it's broken up, whatever that is. It'll take time to develop, but they have to be playing their best basketball later in the season as opposed to this year where they limped into the postseason and then had a 7-game war with
But in
Orlando.
the end, they played better in the playoffs the year they limped into the postseason as opposed to the year before when they didn't limp into the postseason, right?
In terms of beating Orlando and playing, they
they were better this postseason than last.
If they played like they did against Orlando and played the Knicks from last year, I think they lose 4-1 again.
I mean, okay, maybe, but I still think they played better against Orlando than they did against the Knicks the year before. No?
I hear what Mike's saying. I think we
probably both.
They went up 2-0 at home, and they're not even playing that well.
They're not playing great. No, that's true.
So, and then in the Boston series, they were so outmanned. They just played really hard, and credit to them. They competed. They played hard in that series.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I wouldn't say that they beat the doors off with the way that they played in the postseason.
No, certainly not.
It took 7
but ultimately,
games to
they
get
got to
Orlando.
another series, which they didn't the year before. But again, there has to be at least some level of balance because you know how we talk about, the Browns have a good roster, right? And as currently constituted, we know the Browns are a playoff contender.
Yeah.
But whether or not they're a Super Bowl contender has almost solely to do with how good Deshaun Watson is. Mm-hmm. If Deshaun Watson's back to being a great player, the Browns were a Super Bowl contender. If he's as slappy as he's been the last 2 years, they're not a Super Bowl contender. You can con yourself into believing they are, but they're not. And to me, with the Cavs, it's about Evan Mobley. You said we know what they are, we know what their ceiling is, but we don't because we don't know what Evan Mobley's ceiling is.
That's right.
If Evan Mobley can become the player that you guys have described as a unicorn, well, then maybe this current roster can win a championship if he can get to that level. And so I don't think we know what this group is capable of necessarily until we know how good he can be. And so they have to, if they're going to raise their ceiling without making any significant trades, it's got to be on the back of Mobley, that he's got to significantly improve. So if that means it costs you some in the regular season, I think you got to do it because you got to know how good he can be.
You've asked Donovan Mitchell point blank before. Would you ever
punt a game?
I forgot the terminology. Would you ever punt a game to let someone else step up?
To send a message.
Donovan told you no, but then this year it felt like at the end of the Indiana game late in the season, he was okay kind of being the decoy and letting Karras and Darius be the two that kind of led him down the stretch. So we'll see if next season maybe that was a progression because you asked him his first year here.
Yeah.
He said no.
He said, I have to win every game I play.
Yeah.
Second year, he seemed a little more receptive to the idea. So maybe year 3 here, there's even more progression in terms of Donovan in terms of that level of his leadership.
And maybe he has more faith in Evan after the way Evan played against Boston. Who knows?